So, welcome to this episode of Antinatalism Around the World. So, today we are doing something very exciting, which is covering Vietnam. And I'm joined by Hubik and Linh. And it's a bit of an extra special episode today because Hubik and Linh were actually involved in helping with the Vietnamese translation for the Antinatalist Handbook. So, that's how we kind of got into contact. And then now the translation is finished, I thought, why don't we do an episode on antinatalism around the world? So I think that's all the introduction I maybe need to do. Why don't I hand over to you guys? We'll do one by one. And if you just maybe give a bit of an introduction into anything you want to share about yourself, and then how did you first come across the idea of antinatalism in general? Should we go with Hubik first?
All right. Hello everyone, and my name is Hubik. Right. I'm currently living in southern Vietnam, and I'm around 20 years old. And how did I came across this idea is that I watched a video on the channel Abector, which covered the idea, the anti-natalism ideas as basic ideas of that. And I just get interest and just keep digging into it. And now I'm convinced that I'm now an antinatalist.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Linh, do you want to go?
So the first time I encountered something that resembles antinatalism is a video on TED, the TED Talks YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's from the TED Education channel, and it's a story about it's like a fable about a hole where there are people who live inside the hole, and people need to give birth to children so that they can somehow make a ladder so they can climb out of the hole. And so the only way for people to climb out of this hole is to make more children, and so everyone can climb out of the hole. But we all know that not everyone can climb out of the hole, because the last generation, they will have no way to make more people so that they can step on these people to climb out of the hole.
Yeah.
And so that's my first encounter to something that resembles antinatalism. I don't think the video specifically mentioned this philosophy, but it's something that stuck with me. And I really got to know more about antinatalism through your channel, which has been
Cool.
very valuable to me.
I'm glad. It's always nice to hear when I'm putting stuff out there, and then it's nice to hear from people who have found it and find it valuable. So that's very cool. Thank you both for sharing that. That's super cool. I always like hearing how people like first came to hear about antinatalism, because honestly, people hear about it from so many different random places. Like Linh, you're the first person that I've spoken to who has first kind of heard something like the idea from a TED talk. I'm sure there are maybe other people out there. Maybe they've seen the same video, but yeah, it's always interesting to hear where people have first come across this idea. So first question on Vietnam. So just in like in a broad way, what is the culture like in Vietnam when it comes to being able to discuss controversial ideas like antinatalism? And I know, obviously, Hubik, you're in Vietnam, but Linh, I can't remember if you've mentioned it on the recording, but you're in Germany, so you've got a bit of a sort of inside/outside perspective. So, Hubik, why don't we go with you first, and then Linh, you can give a bit more of a different answer, I guess, with your experience from Germany. But yeah, Hubik.
Okay. So I'm living in southern Vietnamese, southern Vietnam, and the culture here is a bit more open compared to the north of Vietnam. It's still very traditional, value centered. Uh, the most idea ideology is the idea of a filial piety, which is the concept of like the child is property to the parents, and they have the duty to create the next generation to continue the bloodline. Um, and Actually, in Southern Vietnam, I am really comfortable about sharing this, but not like openly to everyone. Just that to who that I really trust to share for myself secret, that is.
So the culture in Vietnam, like
Hubik, yes.
yes, Hubik, yes, like
Yes.
Hubik already mentioned, is quite puts heavy emphasis on harmony. So generally, extreme discussions are avoided, and antinatalism is a very, I would say, compared to the norm, a very extreme idea. And so I am not aware of any community in Vietnam who is actively spreading the idea of antinatalism. Um, Here and there's people who say that, oh, I don't want to have kids because I want to concentrate on my life and my career and things like that. But on a philosophical basis, there's no antinatalist movement in Vietnam that I am aware of. And I came from the north, the Hanoi, so the capital of Vietnam, and there's already a very different point of view on children in big cities compared to the countryside. I have my relatives in the countryside, and they still put heavy emphasis on having children so that they can take care of their parents when they get older and to continue the bloodline. And whereas in cities, it's more about just let the child be more free and do whatever we want. But there's still very heavy emphasis on like we have to become good people in society, and we have to contribute and to have to be have good grades at school and things like that. It's not easy for me to share these ideas with anyone in Vietnam.
Yeah. And are there like key ways in which there's a difference between Eastern and Western cultures that's maybe relevant to antinatalism or controversial ideas?
I think in the West it's more normalized to talk about the idea that we don't want to have children, and we are concerned about environmental problems, for example. In Vietnam, there's not much emphasis on environmental problems because it's a very the country is industrializing, and people put more emphasis on growing wealth rather than protecting the environment. I feel like in the West, there's much more concern about long-term future and the well-being of the children than in Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how all around the world like different cultures interact with this one issue. It's like it's one issue, but it's interpreted and seen in so many different ways around the world. Yeah, so you mentioned that you're not really aware of any sort of anti-natalist community or movement or anything like that in Vietnam. Do either of you have either of you interacted with any obviously apart from each other, but have you interacted with any other sort of Vietnamese anti-natalists, or are you aware of if there are any other Vietnamese anti-natalists, or is it just completely sort of like a black hole apart from you guys?
Well, to my understanding, I think there is literally none antinatalist in Vietnam. I have tried to join some of the philosophy uh, community on Facebook and on other social platforms. But whenever I mention about antinatalism, I would get shut down very, very fast. I
Right.
cannot see anyone else. Yeah.
Maybe one thing I'd like to add here is that there's so Buddhism is a very popular religion in Vietnam, and the core idea of Buddhism is that life is suffering, or at least life contains suffering, which is an essential part of life. And it is, we can derive from that idea that maybe it's not really a good idea to bring children into this world. But at the same time, when I look at the Vietnamese Buddhist communities, many still have children, and so I don't think that it's antinatalism is a core idea in Buddhism, but I think it's a relevant idea that is popular.
Mm. Do either of you have any? I don't know how knowledgeable either of you are on Buddhism, because I know sometimes if you're from a country or in a country where there's a certain religion that's like the background default religion, if you're not particularly religious yourself, you might not actually know that much about the religion apart from maybe sort of basic stuff, which is definitely the case with me in the UK with Christianity. I know a bit about it, but I'm no expert on it. But d- do you guys have any sort of understanding of Buddhism and how antinatalism can intersect with it and has in the past, beyond just this basic idea of life being suffering?
Well, it's very interesting that in Vietnam, I get to involve in Buddhism. I don't really want to, but I just get involved. I have to go to temples and all the stuffs. Uh, and interestingly, whenever they say that life is suffering, they always say that, but I don't know why they just still gloriate anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just very weird to me. At least in Vietnam, that is. Yes.
Lynn, do you have anything?
I think yeah, it's a very popular saying in Vietnam that the life is suffering, and but at the same time, I think the idea, the reason that people still have children is that because Vietnam is influenced by many different philosophical ideas and also Confucianism from China, and which is a philosophy that puts heavy emphasis on the family and to continue the tradition.
Right.
And so I think yeah, I think Vietnamese people just have to find a way to like to make a fusion of all these different philosophical ideas into something that maybe when you think about it is not logical, and these things contradict themselves, but most people just don't question it.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, obviously Buddhism isn't the main religion in the UK, but there is a population of Buddhists here, and you have Buddhist centers, especially in London. There's a few Buddhist centers, and I actually went a few times to one of the Buddhist centers here and did a couple of courses there, just like learning a bit about Buddhism, meditation, and some other courses. And I always found it really interesting how there are like very core ideas in Buddhism, like you guys were saying, life is suffering, or at least it contains a lot of suffering. And they have these core ideas that you think they're so close to getting to something like antinatalism, but they just miss it at the last moment. And I found that so strange when I was there and I was talking to these people, and it, sometimes it would actually feel like I was talking to an antinatalist, but then they wouldn't reach that conclusion of, well, we shouldn't create life. So there were a couple of the ordained Buddhists there that I went and spoke to, and I asked them about if there is a sort of a contradiction between this idea of life being suffering and then it being very normal for, at least in my experience in the West, for Buddhists to have children as well. And honestly, their reply was really disappointing. They spoke in a way where it was quite obvious that they'd never really thought about this before, which was surprising to me because in many other ways they were very thoughtful people. Like I would say they were much more thoughtful people than the average person in the UK, but they never thought about this question. And so they just came out with the sort of, standard level zero stuff that you would hear people say, like, there's good sides of life, or, except this sort of stuff, this general stuff. Um, so I've been meaning to go back to that Buddhist center and maybe ask them if I could host a group discussion there that I can maybe record on video and share on YouTube about this topic. But I haven't gotten around to actually doing that. And annoyingly, actually, yesterday I was right near the center. I should have gone in and asked them. But yeah, I plan to do that in the future at some point, because I feel like Buddhism is such fertile ground for antinatalism, but they just don't quite get there.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
would really be interested in a video of you going to that center. I'm sure
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
me
watch that
too.
video immediately when it comes out.
yeah. I think, I mean, it. Obviously, I wouldn't be under the illusion that I would convince them all. That's very hard to do in any conversation with any group of people. But it would be super interesting just to see how they engage with the topic, right? And try and understand, in my eyes, the mental gymnastics that they would have to do to avoid getting to that conclusion. But yeah, it would be super interesting. Um, I wanted to ask you what your personal experiences have been about discussing antinatalism. So whether it's with friends, family, or if you've engaged with people, sort of. I mean, this is obviously more focused on like other Vietnamese people. So rather than just random people online, but yeah, do you guys have much experience talking with other people, like friends or family, or other people in Vietnam about antinatalism? And what has that been like? Should we, Lynn? Should we go with you first?
For me, I've had positive experiences when discussing with people about this topic, because most of the people around me are pretty tolerant of me, which I'm very grateful for, because I would describe myself as very almost as an outsider to many communities, and
Mm,
I have very strange ideas, as people would describe. But I somehow managed to discuss with my parents about this idea of antinatalism, which is a very sensitive topic, because these are the people that have brought me into this
yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah.
And at first, my mom, she was quite upset about it, because she thought that I was blaming her for bringing
Right.
me into this world. But I in the end, I managed to explain to her that most people are just not aware of these issues, and I don't blame anyone who is doing something because they are not aware of it. Um, and so she's fine with it now, and we have a pretty good relationship. And and I'm also grateful for what she has done to me throughout my life, but just not the fact that she has given birth to me. She has
Mm,
done a lot
mm.
for me, which I'm very grateful. But just this one thing about bringing me into this world, and it's obvious that she wouldn't need to do me any favor if I had not existed in the first place.
Yeah.
So and to my father, he when I told him about this idea that maybe it's not a good idea to have children, and he told me that but none if we don't have children, then society would collapse. And I told him that it's not necessary for society to keep continuing at all cost. And
Mm,
it occurred to him that he has never really thought about it before.
mm.
And so he didn't really yeah, he was not really upset about it, but he just kind of very contemplative about it. And it so far it has not affected my relationship with my father in any way.
That's cool to hear. I'm glad to hear that, because I think, like, sometimes I've seen antinatalists, um they do engage in a lot of blaming of their parents and parents in general, and they have a lot of anger towards them. And on one level, I obviously want to sympathize with those antinatalists, because that's probably coming from a place of, they're probably in a bad place right now. Like, their life circumstances aren't what they would like them to be. and so they've got this visceral like anger about life, and that's aimed towards their parents. And I want to be sympathetic with that, because obviously they didn't ask to be put in that position. But at the same time, like, it takes a lot of energy to hate anyone, especially your parents, and that's going to eat you up, because you know, yeah, like, on the one hand, you're here now, you know, and it can be shit for a lot of people a lot of the time. And yeah, obviously we don't want to dismiss that. But on the other hand, again, you are here now. You've kind of got to just you've got to accept the fact that you are here now. Your parents didn't really know what they were doing, and yeah, hating them is going to destroy your relationship with them, and it's probably not going to benefit you as well, because it's just going to eat you up inside. Um, so yeah, and it's always nice to hear like experiences people have had where they've spoken to their parents about it, and like your father, it's made them think about things as well. And I have actually known one or two antinatalists that have spoken to their parents and actually convinced them of antinatalism as well, which is very cool. But yeah, Hubik, what's your experience been like?
So I'm very vocal about discussing this topic to my circles, to my social circle. And of course, I did discuss with my parents too. And we actually have very civil discussion. We just lay all our arguments out of the table and just exchange what we are really thinking. And it was a really pleasant conversations, but I cannot really convince them uh, to these ideologies because
Mm.
um, I don't know why, but my mother, she just say that why would you think so much about this issue? It doesn't affect you in any way, and I'd be like, what really? No. Mm. It's very affects me. She's believe in reoccurrence, like when you die and you relive
Re-
another life in
Reincarnation.
reincarnation. Yeah, I forgot the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, she believe in that, so she's trying to convince me in that, but I can't really buy it from her. Mm.
Mm.
My dad is a bit more dismissive. He just is all boiled out to because I wanted to do that. I wanted to give birth to you, so that's why I did it. And it just end there. So I cannot really do anything else to let
Mm.
him know more about this philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's cool you were able to have that conversation though, because there are a lot of people who they they kind of live as I don't know if this is overblowing it a bit, but kind of like a double life almost. They're sort of an antinatalist, and there may be other views they have as well, and they keep them very separate from their family life. And their parents don't even know, or their friends don't even know. So it's nice that you're able to at least discuss it with them, even though they may not be convinced. Like your father, he kind of dismisses it, or your mother has like very different views with reincarnation. But it's cool that you're actually able to like have that discussion. I wanted to move now on to or back to Vietnam as a country. So are you aware of any like political trends or movements that are maybe going on or have gone on, or laws that are relevant to antinatalism or procreation in general in Vietnam? Hubik, I can see you nodding your head.
I would say Vietnam right now is really pro-natalist. So there's a lot of program regarding that. The parents will be financially rewarded when they uh, procreate two children before they turn 35 years
Right.
old. Yeah, that's just one program that I know of.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Lynn, do you have any knowledge on this?
Mm. So before, because now Vietnam is facing a problem of falling birth rates as the country industrializes. So the government has lifted the two-child policy that they implemented before, the two-children policy. But before, you were really, but for me, it's a form of state-controlled antinatalism, what came before.
Mm.
And so you were punished for having more than two children. It's a little bit like the one-child policy in China before.
Yeah.
And for me, that you could consider it antinatalism, but for me, it's not true antinatalism, because it's the state still treats these children as an instrument to reach a goal of sustainable growth.
Mm.
It's not that they want to limit the children for the children's own well-being or something. Although I think the policy is correct at limiting the number of births, and therefore partially reduce the suffering of the people in Vietnam. But now they turn it 180 degrees, and now they encourage people to have children. And
Mm.
so it's not in any way related to the idea of antinatalism as we discuss it here. It's just like the government is treating children as a means to an end.
Yeah. Do you know how long the two child policy was in for? When did it come in, and when did it actually finish?
I think in 1988 it started,
Right.
and it was lifted. I don't know, a couple of years ago. Maybe Hubik knows more about this.
I think it's lifted around 2010, I believe, but I'm not really sure about that. Mm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now they very encourage people to create as much as possible. But one thing that I find very absurd is that the reward that I told you about is
Yeah.
just around $96 for having two children
Oh,
before
really?
return to yeah. And I find it's really sure for that price they accept to give birth to someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is that $96 per month or per year, or just $96 in one go?
96 flat is one goal.
Oh, really? Oh, whoa, that's
That's
crazy.
really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know. I mean, Vietnam isn't alone in this. There are quite a lot of countries now that are becoming much more pro-natalist. It's sort of like a resurgence of pro-natalism, because there was, so through doing research into sort of like a history of antinatalism, I've sort of come across in the sort of early 20th century and late 19th century, there was a lot of discussion around population, births, and there were actually a few antinatalists around that time, which was cool, at least in Europe. And there was a lot of discussion in like the feminist movement about limiting reproduction or using reproduction as a way of gaining political power. Uh, as in, they would, limit their own reproduction or not reproduce to go against sort of patriarchal norms and try and, because the government wanted them to reproduce, so they would say, no, we're not going to reproduce so that we can get more rights, etc. And yeah, so the world was like, seemed very pro-natalist back then. And definitely in, I know, Europe and America after the Second World War, there was a lot of sort of emphasis around pro-natalist values. You have like the boomer generation, the baby boomers. And then because human population was rising so much, including up until, around today, there was then this kind of scare, like you were saying, then countries like China or Vietnam brought in these limits on how many children people should have. And there was general awareness, I think, like, at least in the West where I am, but I'm sure around the world generally, of like, overpopulation. There was all this discussion of overpopulation. But now we're going back into pronatalism, and there's much more discussion about, declining birth rates and population collapse and these terms used. And so now we're getting a lot of states around the world being more pronatalist than ever. And I don't know if it really seems to be working anywhere. but that I'm hoping not, but I'm expecting that is just going to make them double down and be more pro-natalist. So you've got countries like Russia. I don't know if either of you have seen my videos I've done on what Russia is doing around antinatalism, pronatalism.
Yes,
They're
it
like
is. Yeah,
banning discussion of
yeah.
antinatalism and even being child free. And I haven't kept up with the latest, but the last time I looked, there was a woman who had already been fined for sharing child-free memes, which is crazy. Then you've got China is being more pro-natalist now. You've got America is being more pro-natalist all over Europe, and it sounds like Vietnam is doing that as well. So I think this is going to be a common story we see across the world. Governments becoming more pro-natalist and trying to put in these things like you were saying, Hubik, about basically just trying to pay people to have children, basically. So do either of you have any knowledge of if antinatalism has been discussed in the media in antinatalism at all? TV, radio, newspapers, stuff like that. Hubik?
Well, in internet media, when you search for the term antinatalism in Vietnamese, uh, it will not show any search. It only like 2 or 3 articles. But if you search for pro-natalism, it will like the list just keep going on and on all
Mm,
the official site and newsletters, all the stuff. And
yeah.
yeah, so I feel like the government really try to push the narrative of pro-natalist.
Yeah, yeah. Does just a quick question because I actually don't know about this. So in Vietnam, is the media generally free or is it government controlled?
I would say government control. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
No,
Um,
since I am living in Germany now, I do realize that the Vietnamese state media is heavily controlled by the government. But at the same time, in comparison to something like China, we still have a lot of freedom. We still can get access to most Western news media outlet, and in general, I think we are more free than China, for example. And in regard to antinatalism, there was this one celebrity. I don't remember his name now, but he once made a statement that if your family is poor, then it would be a mercy to not have children. And then the conversation quickly devolved into arguing about rich and poor instead of arguing about whether having children or not. And so blame him for not understanding the difficulties of poor families instead of whether it's or not it's good to have children. So that is one occasion that I'm aware of, but otherwise it's a topic that is not discussed at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you don't happen to know is because obviously there's kind of like there's media in terms of media organizations and stuff like that, and it sounds like yeah, there's nothing antinatalism related that's really really going on. Are you guys aware of any discussion of antinatalism in Vietnamese on places like YouTube, for example, or online by ordinary people? I know before you were saying you're not really aware of any other Vietnamese antinatalists, so I'm guessing maybe there's not. But have you seen any discussion, at least online, of antinatalism in Vietnam?
I would say there are some channels that has touched on the notion of procreating in certain ways. And yeah, they did kind of consider the possibility of antinatalism, but not really. They don't really use the term itself. So
Mm.
yeah, regarding really discussing about antinatalism, I don't think there is a real conversation happening right now.
Yeah, maybe I think I've said this before, but even the idea of not having children because you want to focus on yourself is still a relatively new idea in Vietnam.
Mm.
And so even for my friends in Vietnam, especially women, they have to get married before 30, otherwise they would be considered nearly worthless and if by societal standards.
Oh wow.
um, So I think it's very difficult for any kind of antinatalist idea to spread in Vietnam right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I actually, one other question just came to mind. I don't know if either of you have pursued this personally, but do you know what the situation is in Vietnam with, if say if someone wanted to get like a vasectomy or a sterilization, is that a possibility in Vietnam, or is it sort of banned unless there's sort of like exceptional circumstances?
Well, actually, it is really affordable here and really approachable.
Oh,
I
really?
actually planning to have my vasectomy at the end of this year,
Right,
hopefully.
right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And I would say it's cheap enough for ordinary people to get vasectomized. But
Right,
I don't really know because to what I see at the hospital, some of them required to bring in the marriage certificate to
right.
like both parties agree that
Yeah,
the husband will get vasectomized. But I'm not uh, married yet,
yeah.
so I would like to see how this turn out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one, and like with a lot of things, it's kind of different in different countries. I would say even though the UK generally is very progressive, it's very liberal, very open. But even in the UK, when it comes to sterilization, there's still a bit of pushback. It does depend on who you are. So and it depends on like which part of the system you've gone through. So I'm quite lucky. When I went to get a vasectomy, it was actually very easy for me. But I've spoken to other people in the UK who found it like very difficult. Especially it tends to be difficult, yeah, like if you're young and you haven't had any children, there's still this kind of view of like, well, you shouldn't be able to make this decision to get a sterilization because you might regret it. You haven't had kids yet. Maybe you'll change your mind and you'll want to have kids. Maybe you'll meet a partner and you'll want to have kids with your partner. Stuff like this. There's still a bit of that attitude here in this country. But that do you are you kind of worried that maybe the situation will change in Vietnam and it will become less easy if the government is becoming more pro-natalist? Or has Vietnam always kind of been open relatively about sterilization?
Well, I can really guess because I just approached
Yeah.
vasectomy lately, like
Right.
at the start of the year. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lynn, do you have anything on that?
No, I'm not aware of it because I've been living in Germany for quite a long time now,
Yeah.
and these issues about vasectomy is something that you would first start to think about when you turn 20 or something. And I was in Germany way before that,
Yeah, yeah.
so I'm not aware of any discussion.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fair enough. The last question I had, um, I think the answer is just gonna be no. But are you aware of any anti-natalist figures in Vietnam? I'm assuming the answer is no currently, by the sounds of our discussion so far, but also in history, are there any Vietnamese figures in history, maybe particularly in like the Buddhist tradition, anyone at all who you would say is sort of vaguely anti-natalist that you're aware of? Lynn, do you want to go first?
Um, so I don't think that this figure is an antinatalist, but he did not have children, which is very common for leaders in Vietnam, which is Ho Chi Minh, so the
Right,
founder of modern Vietnam.
right,
And he did not have any children, but at the same time, many people call him Uncle Ho. So
right,
I think in a way it's more like for me it's I see it as something positive that instead of focusing on his own bloodline, he focuses on the people
right.
to make sure that the well-being of the people of Vietnam is taken care of before maybe him having his own child and take care of them.
when I did the episode of antinatalism around the world in India, we kind of had a discussion around this, in that in India, it's kind of seen as like, if someone is like a bit of a leader, they will not have children intentionally because they would want to focus their efforts on the country or whatever organization they are in. And that's actually very different from in the West. So in the West, and I don't know, Lynn, if you've picked up on this in Germany. I don't know if it is the same in Germany, but like in the UK, it pretty much seems like this in America. There's kind of still this perception that if a politician or a leader, or basically someone who is trying to represent the public, if they don't have children, they are kind of seen as slightly less capable of leading the country or representing the people, because they're seen as like, well, this person doesn't have children, they can't relate to ordinary people as much because ordinary people have children, or they don't have a stake in the future because they don't have children, which both of those things are obviously ridiculous. But this is like the perception. And actually, it's been quite explicit in America recently, because you have people like JD Vance has been, even suggesting things like 2 votes for parents, because people who don't have children, they don't have a stake in the future, why should they get as much of a say, all of this sort of stuff. So it's become sort of more explicit as well. So it's interesting that, like, in the East, maybe it's actually seen as like the opposite. That's like a interesting dichotomy. Yeah, Lynn, I don't know. Have you kind of noticed that? Is that the same in Germany?
In Germany, there's not a heavy emphasis on the cult of personality like in
Right.
America, or I'm not aware of the UK, how the politics is there. But I'm aware that in America, it's very common for politicians to show the public how great the family is, and even the Obama administration, and
Mm,
Donald Trump now, and for me, it's on some level I can understand it. It makes the politician more relatable to the average person. But at the same time, I think many leaders, like great leaders in the past, they managed to lift people out of extraordinary situations in
mm,
which having children maybe was not the priority, but maybe like winning a war against some invaders, or to transition the country into a new form of politics that maybe is better
mm.
for the country. And so I think in those situations, it doesn't matter much whether you have children or not.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add on in Vietnam on the political about having political figure having children. I would say there's not much emphasis on that because having children is like the baseline of the society
Right.
in Vietnam right now. Yeah, the culture is that everyone have children. That is.
Mm. And Hubik, do you know any sort of figures in history that are maybe like vaguely anti-natalist in Vietnam, or there's not really anyone you can think of?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think that the closest one I can think of are the monks that
Yeah.
they practice Buddhism. Yeah, not really anti-natalist.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I often expect the answer to that question in these interviews to be kind of limited, because it's it's kind of a weird one, because in history, one, you've got the whole aspect of like antinatalism has never really been a massively dominant idea, so there's going to be few examples anyway. Also, the fact that in history, and even it less so today because we have the internet, but definitely in history, if someone was anti-natalist, they may their views maybe not even be recorded. So there are probably like thousands and thousands of anti-natalists that have existed throughout history. We just don't know they ever existed because they never wrote it down, or if they did write it down, maybe they were persecuted and they were killed and their stuff was burnt. This sort of stuff. So it's, yeah, it's difficult. It's there are figures in history that we know of who are anti-natalists, like Al-Mari. Maybe you guys are familiar with Al-Mari, who lived like 1,000 years ago in what is Syria today. So there are figures, but I think the antinatalism in history is, I think, probably massively underrepresented, because a lot of it just wouldn't have been captured, and if it was captured, it was probably destroyed. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, I always expect there's not going to be many answers when it comes to that question. But those were all the questions I had. Was there anything that you thought maybe that we needed to discuss further? Anything that we missed at all? Anything that you wanted to chuck in at this point?
I think maybe this is not specifically related to Vietnam, but I think the future of having children, for me, the only way that makes sense to me is through artificial intelligence, which means that we just stop having biological children and see AI as our next step of evolution. And we need to make sure that these beings are not conscious or sentient,
Right.
but also they can emulate intelligence, and in a way that uh, makes the transition
Mm.
seamless, and as humans just fade out peacefully. So for me, that's my vision for the future, and which I hope will become true, because with the rise of AI now, I see less and less point in having children or in having people at all who like can contribute less and less to society compared to machines and AI.
Mm.
It sounds a little bit out of the ordinary, but for me, I believe in that vision.
And when you say almost seeing AI as children, do you also mean like physically embodied AI? We have, sort of, have you seen the film Alien?
Uh, the Alien, like the horror movie.
Yeah, the horror movie.
Oh, I was maybe not sure in that sense, but yes. What's what you're trying to get to?
So in Alien they have I forget the character's name now, but there's he's like a cyborg type. So he's like physically looks like a human, but it's inside. It's all like programming. It's not like a brain or
Oh,
anything like
but,
that. Do you mean that sort of thing, or you mean like AI that's still just we interact with on a laptop, for example?
um, I think it has no limit. It can be
Right.
anything we want. Like I'm sure there are still people who would want to have relationships with something they would consider children in physical form. But I think there are just many people who just want maybe a successor, or like something that we have created collectively as humans, as a big project of all humanity, that could be physically something completely different
Right.
than human, but still we would consider it something that came out of us, like a
Right. Right.
metaphorical child.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, Hubik, did you have any? Was there anything you wanted to say on that, or anything that you had of your own?
I would like to touch a bit on the topic of veganism. In Vietnam, I would say it's really hard to be a vegan because the system is not readily supported to for anyone to be a vegan. Like myself, I don't have the financial or the system that really support me being a vegan. So do you have any like suggestions to
Mm.
maybe push into that?
So the only thing I feel like I can really say is there. So veganism is at a point now where pretty much any country in the world there will be some vegans. So what I would do is, if you're struggling, to try and find that community and interact with them and try and integrate yourself into that community, because the more you surround yourself with the people who you want to emulate, it'll be easier to adopt those behaviors and make those changes. And that goes with like many things generally, not just veganism, like any behavior change. If you are trying to do more exercise and you hang around with people who do lots of exercise, you are going to end up doing more exercise. So I would try and find like Facebook groups, Reddit forums, stuff like that of vegans in Vietnam. Even once we finish this interview, I can do a bit of research, see if I find anything, I can send it to you. Um, because I think being able to connect with people like that and ask them for advice, because they are in the same country and can understand your local conditions, they will definitely be able to help you. The other thing that I would say is there are organizations that are set up that can help you with sort of coaching and try and tailor the advice to your local and personal circumstances. So there's a organization called Challenge 22 that do that. They might have local Vietnamese contacts they can put you in contact with as well. So I can send you those links afterwards, and I can put them in the description of the video as well for anyone else who wants to have a look at them. Yeah, because that may be able to help you in your local circumstances. Other than that, I I don't know what more advice I can give, because I've never been to Vietnam. I don't know like the local circumstances, and I can't suggest like specific products to be able to use and stuff like that. So yeah, I can send you those links. Hopefully that's somewhat helpful, but yeah, I think it's just a case of yeah. What one approach you can do is like identify specific products you're still using that are from animals or tested on animals or whatever, and just one by one going through them and trying to do research on like alternatives and replacements you can find in Vietnam, and just take it like one by one. There is, obviously it's perfect to be able to do it all at once, and there is often this kind of pressure to do everything at once, but I think the best thing is to do whatever is sustainable, that you can do over the long term. So if that's doing stuff one by one, then I think that's better. But yeah, does that help at all?
Yes, thank you a lot. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
I do have something to add here, and actually, Lawrence, you are the person who has convinced me to turn into vegan.
Oh, very cool.
I've been vegan for about 6 months now.
Oh, cool. That's
Um,
amazing.
at first, I thought it would be very difficult, but then I realized that in certain supermarkets in Germany, there are many great vegan products that are made from soybean that
Mm,
imitate the taste of meat. It's not
yes.
100%, but for me, that's enough. And actually, when I was in Vietnam as a child, my grandma was a Buddhist, and so she was also vegan
Right.
because in Buddhism you're not allowed to kill other animals
Yeah.
if you are strictly a Buddhist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes my parents took me and my grandma to a vegan restaurant, and the food there was really, really good.
That's
Um,
super cool.
so I've had very positive experiences with veganism, and also I really, since I came to Germany, I really miss the tofu in Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Yes,
It's not as good in
that's
Germany.
such a great vegan product that has actually been tried in true food for maybe hundreds of years now,
Yeah.
and the taste is really great. Tofu in Germany cannot compare with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there are many ways that you can cook tofu, and you can just eat it right away with soy sauce, or you can
Yeah.
fry it, and you can cook with tomato or something, but I think tofu is a great start, and it's very
Yeah.
easy. And normally, normal people, non-vegans already eat tofu in Vietnam also.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, tofu is becoming more and more popular in the UK as well. Obviously, it's going to be nothing like in Vietnam. I'm sure like you say, in Vietnam, it's going to be much better. But yeah, I eat tofu all the time. I love tofu. It's great, and it's also good because it's like you say, it's so versatile. You can use it in so many ways, but also it's super nutritious as well. That's super cool to hear from both of you guys on that. That's super cool. And yeah, Hubik, I'll send you the links that I can find to that stuff, and yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
super cool. And let me know how
Thank
you
you a
get on
lot.
as well. I'd be super
Okay.
interested to hear.
Yeah. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. That'd be great. Cool. Yeah, that was everything I had. I had maybe one final quick question, which was, do the either, because like I said at the start, so both of you contributed to the Vietnamese translation of the handbook, and I wanted to know if either of you had any sort of future plans at all that are related to antinatalism. I'm not expecting you to or anything like that. It's just out of interest. If you have any ideas of things you want to do around this topic, or if you're just gonna, you've got no specific plans, just live your life. Hubik, do you want to go first?
I think I will try to translate the Antinatalism on your website too. The one that have English and Hebrew, I believe.
Oh,
So,
right,
so I will
the
try to do.
arguments. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I'll try to do the Vietnamese version too.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was also a lot of fun for me to proofread the handbook, and
Mm.
be happy if I can contribute in any way in the future to any project of yours.
Okay, no, that's amazing. So, Hubik, have you? Because I know you obviously did the Vietnamese translation and then sent it to me, so I wasn't really aware of it beforehand. Have you started translating the arguments, or have you not started that yet?
Not yet, not yet. But I
Okay.
will in the very soon future, very
Yeah.
close future.
No, well, what I was going to say was, I was actually going to review those and
Mm.
update them. So what I might
Oh,
do is I'll try and do that as soon as possible, and then I'll let you know, so that you don't have to translate the old one, but then I change the English one or anything like that.
okay.
So I'll try and
Got it.
do that soon, and I'll let you know.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. And obviously thank you for both of the work you've done on the handbook and that you've offered to do in the future on the handbook. That's amazing. And it hopefully it will actually be able to maybe get a tiny bit of a ball rolling in Vietnam, because now there is actually some stuff about antinatalism in Vietnamese, which it sounds like there really isn't any. So that's super cool. And obviously, thank you for joining me today and giving up your time. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been like super interesting learning about Vietnam and about you two and talking to you guys. So yeah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you a lot, Lawrence. Yeah, it's a pleasure to talking to you and Lynn also. Yes.
Yeah, it was great fun for me today also, and this conversation actually went better than I expected.